Friday, October 1st, and several things have happened this week. One of which being our friend Meghan McCain posted another article where she spoke her truth without fear on the Daily Mail site. Again, that site is a hellscape. Terrible navigation, just a disaster. It makes my eyes hurt. And her whole rant was about immigration and the embarrassment at the southern border, which is all President Biden's fault. The images of the guys on horses tracking down the Haitians, which was just hideous, by the way. Uses this again to talk about how, the president is not governing for the centrists or the moderates or the middle. He's beholden to the squad. He's afraid to anger 8 really powerful young women in the House. Somehow implying that he's governing by fear of AOC, which I don't see that being the truth. But the policies that he's trying to enact are the things that he did campaign on, and it's why he won the election. It's because those are the things that people actually want. Even Republicans want them. But they just don't want the Democrats to get credit for it. But it's when it's their turn to lead, they're not actually going to give people what they want. She says he's talking out of both sides of his mouth, that, they said to immigrants, don't come, but then, when the Haitians arrived and they gave them a special dispensation to stay, at least some of them, they didn't coldly ship everybody back. So it sent a signal to say, well, now you're behaving just like you campaigned. Yeah, it's fine. And she talks about, when she was campaigning with her father, I assume, which was what, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, whenever that was. And some guy in Iowa, and she remembers deeply the pain and the hurt and the fear in his voice when he talked about the universal highway, which was apparently some secret road where that immigrants could come from the southern border and just funnel their way into the United States and go anywhere and do anything. And he was terrified of that. And so her answer is to placate that fear instead of actually educating the dumbdumb and saying there is no universal superhighway, universal freeway, universal highway, universal whatever he was talking about, that there is a process for immigration, for seeking asylum. And if anything, the Trump administration whittled all that down by not staffing the border and creating a crisis. Why they haven't fixed it yet, at least the staffing issue and getting people processed faster in the Biden administration, is beyond my comprehension. But the answer isn't to say you're a dum-dum, so we'll lead based on your dumbness. It's really exhausting that we continue to let the dumbest among us influence the most and wield the most power. The whole mask mandate, the whole vaccine thing. Why are we placating these idiots? Get the vaccine or don't do anything. Wear a mask or don't go outside. Anyway, she goes on to talk about his, how President Biden's poll numbers are just tanking, and they're all the way down to 44%. Meg, President Trump's approval rating never got to 40%. His highest marks were in the 30s. So, people might be getting a little frustrated with the amount of time things are taking. But the blame isn't on the president or his policies. The blame is on the Republicans and Manchin and Sinema. If Manchin and Sinema would get on board, we could actually get some shit done. But they are what's destroying and ruining the possibilities for the Democrats of getting anything done and the potential loss in the midterms. This isn't Biden's fault. His administration, his policies are good. and they're actually very popular, even though you tend to think that they aren't, Meg. Um, it's two senators that aren't listening to the will of their own constituents, and playing a political game of obstruction. So that's super fun. And the other thing that happened this week is that someone was worse than Meghan McCain on The View. They invited Caitlyn Jenner as a co-host on Monday or Tuesday, I think. What a maroon. She calls herself the poster child for change. Honey, you might have changed your body, but you didn't change your mind. This whole, liberal on social issues, but a fiscal conservative is bullshit, because the fiscal policies of this country haven't really changed that much, whether under a Republican or a Democrat. It's still a trickle-down economy that is remarkably stupid. It's a giant disaster 40 years later, if it hasn't been proven in the income inequality. So that whole argument is an old school Republican argument that just doesn't hold water anymore. And when asked about the whole, this is the Republicans want Trump to lead the party. The Republican Party is moving towards Trump and QAnon and conspiracy. And she just kept saying, well, the party needs to change. That's how she called herself the poster child for change. The party is changing, Caitlyn, but it's changing into QAnon conspiracy, Confederate, Proud Boy bullshit. And nobody's going to listen to you. The conservative Republican Party are not interested in trans issues, and the gay community thinks you're a traitor. So you're not really, a wielder of influence among anyone, Caitlyn. And she talked about how the old guard Republicans need to step aside and let the new generation fall in. Well, that is very true for the Democratic Party. We need to, Schumer and Pelosi and that guy from Vermont, Leahy. We haven't let the next bench grow into into positions of power at all. And I never used to be, but now I'm on board for term limits. Like you can do 2 years, 2 terms in the Senate, 5 in the House, and that should be it. Anyway, so she's talking about the Republican elders need to step aside. There's already a whole bunch of young Republicans in the federal government, and they're all terrible human beings. They're the Marjorie Taylor Greens, Lauren Boebert, Madison Cawthorn, Josh Hawley, Matt Gaetz. Like, this is the Republican youth coming up. That's where the party's changing, Caitlyn. And you know what? There ain't no room for you in that party, so I don't know why you keep trying. You can knock on that door all you want, but they ain't letting you in.